Teachers of Reddit, what is the strangest note you have had to write home to parents? My mother had to write a note home about one of her kindergartens to her father. Basically the gist of what she had to say was, your child has an obsession with asking people about how big their pee-pee is, and following up in saying my dad's is bigger. Yep. Proudest dad in the world, I bet. As a swim coach to young kids, some as young as 6, I once had to write a note to the tooth fairy. One of my 6-year-olds lost her tooth while swimming and freaked out. Swim practice came to a screeching halt as I had to put together a search party for the tooth. The kid scoured the pool bottom and to no avail, the tooth was not recovered. Her mom was out of town and the girl began to cry frantically, because without a tooth, she wouldn't get anything from the tooth fairy. Another mom who witnessed the event came up to me with some stationery and I wrote a note to the tooth fairy listing the events that had happened, ensuring the fairy that indeed, Ella had lost her tooth and was entitled to her prize. TLDR. 6 years old girl loses tooth at swim practice. I write a letter to the tooth fairy. Not a note, but I once had to call a parent to explain that I'd confiscated their son's cell phone because he was using it in class. I explained that he claimed to have been day trading. I thought he was being a smartass. His dad says, oh my god, he promised he was going to stop that. That's his college fund. Your son tried to milk a female student during the cow presentation. Story. My fiancée is a first grade teacher and had to write a note home at the beginning of the school year for one of her students. At the start of the school year, she has to send a letter home asking the parents to provide basic school supplies like colored pencils, markers, hand sanitizer, tape, etc. She had a student take charge and collect the supplies from around the house himself. The student brought in hand sanitizer and used it before heading to lunch. The hand sanitizer wouldn't evaporate and was making his hands warm. He had brought in a small bottle of KY2-in-1 warming gel. My fiancée couldn't stop laughing while she wrote the note to his parents. Similar incident at a friend's school. She asked that the kids bring in pasta, elbows or wagon wheels, something small, for an art project. One kid bought in a bag of novelty penis-shaped pasta. I believe these were grade 2 students. I was conducting a science lab using a diluted Biuret solution, a strong base. One student spilled some in a chair and didn't tell me. A girl in the class sat down in it and soon started feeling burning itching irritation in the affected area. I ran her across the hall to the office and got a female staff member to take her to the bathroom with instructions to get her jeans off and rinse the affected area. By the time I returned to the room, another student who had witnessed the event had decided to pour the solution on his hand to see what would happen. I had to write a note home to all the parents explaining the whole incident. So my friend Dan worked at a daycare preschool during one of his summers off from college. He had a 3-year-old student, Jack, that would frequently grab his junk and growl. Well, one day, the kids are changing for swimming lessons and Jack is running around the class naked. The teachers are trying to wrangle him in when all of a sudden, he grabs his junk, growls, and then smacks a little girl in the face with his penis. Dan had to make an incident report for this, and not knowing what to say, writes, Jack made inappropriate contact with another student. When Jack's mom came to pick him up, she asked what inappropriate contact was and Dan had to tell her what happened, to which she simply replied, oh my. A week later Jack was pulled out of the school. TLDR. Kid dong slapped a little girl in the face. Oh my. Read this like George Takei. I was sent home with a note in 2nd grade. The note simply read, if Drew 707 is going to eat that much garlic at home, please have him bring some for the rest of the class. The night before, my mom wasn't home and I asked Dad for a snack. He roasted a large head of garlic and gave me some crackers to eat with it. Apparently I reeked. Haha, your dad is funny. My parents got a call from my teacher when I was in 4th grade because I said in class that when people get sad they drink their sorrows away with alcohol. I hadn't realized the question was, what do you do when you're sad? Not a note, but a very panicked phone call. The backstory is that I was really more of a mom to my little brother, and I was his emergency contact because it was easier for me to leave school than my mom to leave work after my parents divorced. There was a sign-out sheet whenever you picked your kid up, and being a sarcastic type I would sign him out for all sorts of ridiculous reasons whenever he had a doctor's appointment or something, which was often because kids, you know. Anyway, I'm talking zombie apocalypse H and blow ninja training. This went on for years. The only one we ever got a phone call about was a pretty innocuous Blues Brothers reference. Mission from God. An office aide called my mom in a panic to make sure me and the kid weren't going to blow some stuff up, I guess. My mother of course laughed the whole thing off, and I signed him out as mission from definitely not God next time, and no one said a thing. I always thought that it was pretty messed up that they didn't bat an eye at H and blow. This is great. If I was the receptionist, I'd probably figure that you two were going on a church-sponsored event. Friend of mine works with kids at a primary school. Last week he had to send a note saying that the kid had inserted a crayon in another kid's anus. Back in elementary school I got suspended for blowing bubbles in the bathroom. They had handed them out for Halloween and I just wanted to blow them. The weirdest part is that the principal cited that it was a choking hazard on the note home to my parents. When I showed them the note they had a good hearty laugh, and on the day of my suspension I went to see 101 Dalmatians in the movies. A close friend of mine is a rather attractive 7th grade science teacher. There have been enough incidents, he be jerking it, with one student that he was required to have a classmate on his desk with outlines of his hands so they wouldn't wander below the desk while she was teaching. His parents were surprisingly not shocked. Not my story, but my dad's, who was principal at my high school. There was a kid who was suspected, known to be, dealing weed to other year 10s one day. Naturally, dad went with the kid to his locker and told him to empty his backpack. One of the items he pulled out was a small metal box, which given the situation is obviously sus. The kid was told to open the box, but he refused, ran to the nearest rubbish bin and emptied the contents. He was visibly distressed. Thinking he had him done for, dad went over to the bin, stuck his hand in and pulled out a massive handful of pubes. Apparently the kid was so embarrassed that his mum might find out he'd shaved his privates that he decided to carry them on his person everywhere. He got a letter sent home about failing to follow instructions from a teacher. I can only imagine what the letter said. What a great diversion to draw attention away from his drug stash. A teacher had to write a weird note about me when I was in grade 3-4. I was playing in this jungle gym thing made of tires, and I was climbing out of the tire, you see. My friend said, "Hey, it's like you're crawling out of a vagina." To which my other friend replied to a girl who was maybe 10-15 feet away, "Hey Nicole, Cairo DCK wants to climb out of your vagina." She told my teacher and I got in trouble. Even though I didn't say anything, my mom got a note from my teacher saying that I wanted to climb into the girl's vagina and that I shouldn't be thinking that way. But in all fairness, she's really hot now and I'd so get in that. I used to be a pretty weird chick. The whole anime fangirl thing. Well, I had a phase where I wore cat ears all the time and would meow. No teacher or my parents ever cared since I was a pretty awesome student. But one day my baby brother goes to kindergarten and proceeds to only meow because I would meow at him all the time. His teacher wrote my parents a letter. My mom framed it and has it in her office because it is hilarious. Dr. Kick's brother refuses to participate in class discussions and only meows. He calls the entire class to meow and is being very disruptive. He gives me crap for it to this day when my family brings it up to mock him. My wife is a teacher. One day after a science lesson involving scales, she had to write a note home saying, "Your son was very disruptive today. He frequently said that we should weigh our excrement on the scales and give a prize to whomever had the biggest BM." I laughed so hard that I made her save the note. I have multiple copies that I frequently show to friends now. My mother is a classroom assistant and works with special needs kids. My favorite story of hers is of the kid that licked things. He would lick his desk, the walls, anything really. So one day she had to send this note home. Kid's name was removed from carpet time today because he would not stop licking another student's hair. I was really hoping for wouldn't stop licking the carpet here. I was a teacher in a primary school once, and I had this situation. When I was unexpectedly called out of the classroom and came back, I noticed that the students stole my handbag and notes from my desk and hid them somewhere. It took me a lot of threats and persuasion to finally get them back. I wrote a note to the parents of the culprits saying that their children were already starting to experiment with theft. One of the parents called back to me and she gave out that they didn't give a sh because taking the current economical situation in our country, we'll all have to start to steal to be able to survive. I guess that I wasn't very successful at teaching somebody on morality that time. When I was in 3rd grade, I wanted to breed fruit flies. I did what any 3rd grader who wants fruit flies would do. I let oranges rot in my desk. That was an interesting time for my teachers. I wanted to grow mold, so I had a jar of molding jam in my desk. 5th graders would have been besties. When my son was in preschool, I received a note from the teacher that he had been put in timeout for whatever infraction. He was placed behind the teacher's desk while she tended to the rest of the class. He disassembled her chair with no tools. I also received a parent-teacher meeting along with that note. In kindergarten, my boyfriend and I went into the bathroom together. He then proceeded to take my dress off. At that point, the other kids in my class realized we were missing and started messing with the light switch, which was outside the door. As I was apparently more scared of the dark than running around in my birthday suit, I sprinted out into the middle of the classroom in nothing but my Wednesday underwear. My parents got a letter warning them of inappropriate behavior and the importance of wearing underwear with the correct day of the week, as it had been a Monday. My boyfriend had apparently also pulled the same stunt with my best friend earlier in the day, so that was a fun little main-age choice talk. TLDR. Some dudes learn how to pimp at a real young age, and day of the week underwear is super treacherous. Sounds like maybe he might have had some inappropriate crap going on at home. I had 16 years old cut his hair, throw it on the girl in front of him, then make snipping noises by her ear. That was my strangest call home. That's actually a really clever prank, assuming you don't mind losing some hair yourself. There was once this kid that may have been mildly retarded, but everyone treated him as a normal kid, so he was in all normal classes. One day during human growth and development or sex ed, we were watching a cartoon video on masturbation, and about halfway through the video we hear a scream from a female classmate followed by the entire class running out of the class. It turns out he wanted to try what he saw in the movie. This kid has also been caught for wiping boogers in his hair and on other people. Parents must have got a lot of weird letters home. Yeah, that's definitely not a mentally stable person. Well, I'm not a teacher, but when I was in kindergarten I got in trouble for throwing goose crap at another kid. My teacher sent me home with a note for my parents. My parents had no idea what to do, so they just told me to wash my hands. It was never spoke of again. I little water clears us of this deed. I don't know, it just reminded me of that line in Macbeth. I think I was in grade 7 at this point. Every year the female GR8s go to the local high school for a women's sports day, and afterwards they get a gift bag which contains some candy, deodorant and tampons. Well, me being the very mature 13-year-old I was, I found out that if you push the back of the tampon applicator, the actual tampon comes flying out. So I was basically shooting people with tampons. So the next day I get on the bus and the bus driver starts bitching about how she found tampons on the bus. She knew it was me, so when we got to school she took me to the office and told the principal. Oh, long story short, he called my parents about the incident, and my mom makes fun of me every day for getting in trouble by shooting tampons at people. Hello, Mrs. Graham? Yes, your son was shooting tampons at people and he's in trouble. I am not a teacher, but I can only imagine how difficult it was for the author of this particular note. Friend of mine, at the time, was really into masturbating freshman year of HS, and one time during PE, decided that he would beat off behind the bleachers. Turns out he was beating off into a shuttlecock. It was badminton day. He comes out from behind the bleachers and just launches the shuttlecock and semen flies everywhere. He is promptly escorted to the principal's office. I can only imagine what it was like to write that letter. There's probably a joke about shuttlecock in there somewhere. How about just depressing? My wife has written variations of has a 0% average for the semester because he did not turn in any work or take any tests. This quarter only attended my class 3 times, left my classroom in the middle of class, entered another classroom, and struck another student. really needs to get his crap together, is a silly name for a child, but he shouldn't let it hold him back. In maybe 2nd grade, I had fallen down I think at recess and sent to the nurse's office. As far as I can remember, I think it just scraped my thigh, but for some reason I had to go. The nurse needed to spray something on the area, probably disinfectant, and told me I needed to drop my pants. I was maybe 7, so I didn't see the big deal. I dropped M. She sprayed me and I was allowed back to recess. She was very impressed though that I was so brave to drop my pants and called my mom to let her know. I can only imagine how odd that was for my mom to hear the school nurse talk about how brave her 7-year-old son was to drop his pants for her. I'm having a bit of trouble believing the nurse thought you were brave just for dropping your pants for her. She likely just told your mother how brave you were for not freaking out when she put disinfectant on. Unless the nurse had a thing for children with dropped pants, in which case I'll leave quietly. A note wasn't sent home that I know of, but I went to a conservative Christian school and there was a special ed kid that everyone tried to treat normally. We were in health class, and the subject of sex came up. That hilarious bastard just blurts out, "So that's what it's called when my daddy chases my mommy around the house." The entire class was silent for a minute, then erupted in laughter. Not me but a classmate. So this guy, let's call him Joe, has been keeping one of those mayo packets in his desk for a while now. So one day in class, he takes it out and starts to play with it, just kinda flipping it around and stuff. All of a sudden, we hear this pop. I look over and see Joe's face covered with mayonnaise. I don't think the teacher wanted to write him up, but here's why the report said. Instead of doing assigned work, Joe popped a mayonnaise packet under his desk. Mayo went everywhere. This will probably get buried, unless there are some kind of people reading the new comments. Kind of the opposite. I had to bring my parents a note home in preschool because my friend and I got suspended for threatening to hit my teacher over the head with a vacuum cleaner. According to the note, we weren't singing and dancing with the rest of the kids, so we were kept inside for playtime. We sat outside our teacher's office, who just so happened to be the principal, and plotted about how we were going to hit her over the head with a vacuum. Keep in mind, we were 3-4 at the time. My mom recently found the letter, and the teacher had written, "I kid you not, I have never been more afraid for my life." 3-year-olds. To the student, not the parents, as I teach at Lee, please refrain from using fart jokes in your future academic writing. My biology teacher wrote up my friend because my gayness was distracting him from across the room. He said he could feel my gayness from across the room. I was at a teacher's conference and there were a pupil that had a short presentation about social media, and he actually opened the front page of Reddit in front of 1,200 teachers and a live internet stream. It could have been a pretty awkward moment, but he did get away with it though. Nothing too bad on the front page. Would have been a great note though. Showed P to 1,200 teachers. Would have been funny if his Reddit was only subscribed to our Hente, our Lolican, our Gore, and our Yif. I had to call a student's parents because he was drawing dongs all over other kids' papers. I warned him that I had to call. He was a junior in high school, and told him that if he broke the news first, it would probably go smoother. When I called, I calmly explained to his mom that he had been drawing crude penises everywhere. She was quiet for a moment, and then replied, "That's what he was saying." When he called me I thought he said he was drawing peanuts. The next day, the kid finds me and says that morning at breakfast, his dad was at the table reading the paper when he sat down. Dad creases the paper down and says, "You think you're freaking funny? Drawing dongs on people's papers? You're done." Something like 8% of kids do it, but whatever. I used to take peanut butter and a spoon to school for lunch cause I was, am still, a picky freaking kid. I did this for a while and ended up making a necklace with a plastic spoon on the end. My friends liked it and I ended up making more and sharing my peanut butter. Well, once it got big enough, the administration clearly had to put a stop to this. The VP confronted me in the hallway and made me give up my spoon. I did it again and so did everyone else. They took everyone's spoons. Said we could no longer do it. I argued it was for my lunch and they didn't give a dang. They said that it was drug paraphernalia. A freaking plastic spoon on boondoggle around my neck. Mine wasn't so much a note sent home, but a little tidbit added to the school handbook banning plastic spoons on necklaces. That's right, I got plastic spoon necklaces banned from my junior high. That was 13 years ago. My brother went to that same school 2 years back. Guess what rule is still in their handbook? School admins are idiots. The vice principal at my HS called my parents to tattle on me. They reinstated the Pledge of Allegiance after years of not doing it. Not sure why. And when the kid who sat behind me didn't say it, I didn't either, just to see what would happen. All the kids who didn't recite the pledge were sent to the VP's office. I overheard the kid say that he was Jewish and it was against his religion to say the words under God, and they let him go without incident. My turn was up next, so I told him that I was an atheist and I didn't believe in God and saying the pledge was against my beliefs. The VP flipped his lid, got right in my face and said things to me like, "How can you look at yourself in the mirror every morning and you're a disgrace," etc, etc. I was a drum major in the marching band, not a majorette. Big difference. And he asked me how I could salute the US flag during football games when the national anthem was played, and I replied coldly, "Because it's my job." I thought the top of his head was going to blow right off. A little backstory. I was really just doing it to rile this guy up, as he was a real jerkwad and he didn't like me because my older brother was a notorious troublemaker while I was a straight A student and very involved in lots of extracurriculars. The VP was desperate to catch me doing something wrong and had tried and failed to mess with me in other ways throughout HS. It really was a weird Ferris Bueller kind of situation. Looking back at it, dude had some issues. Anyway, VP called my house and got my stepdad, ranted on for a while about how they should pull me from marching band and other unkind things. My stepfather replied gruffly, "I don't give a crap what she does," not getting any satisfaction there. The VP went to my music teacher demanding I be removed from band, and he politely refused, saying that it was my choice and that my job with the band was completely separate. That guy was the single most influential teacher I ever had. Long story, but it was gratifying to be supported when I was bucking the system such as it was then. ETA, I'm getting a lot of comments about fairness etc. And I'm realizing I should have mentioned that this happened around 1990. Things were pretty different then, so just as a frame of reference. As a Canadian, I find the idea of saying the Pledge of Allegiance every day, or actually at all, kind of creepy. We did play the national anthem every day at one of my high schools, but we didn't have to sing along or anything, and I think that's pretty weird too. Nationalism is weird, and I don't know that I think it belongs in public schools any more than religion does. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.